Inner Light with Saima, we welcome our amazing guest, Caleb Matthews, who is a global speaker, dream interpreter, and spiritual strategist who's been guiding people for over 2 decades to step into the unique design. His SSB method, aligning spirit, soul, and body, isn't just a framework, it's a lifestyle of clarity, peace, and power. So get ready to explore what it means to truly walk in the DNA of a design. So, Caleb, welcome to the show.
Anna, thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
You're warmly welcome. I'm amazing. So, Caleb, yeah, it's my pleasure to have you here. So let's start with what inspired you to create the SSB method of aligning spirit, soul, and body?
Well, for me, the inspiration came from a very young age. When I was 6 years old, I had a very profound encounter and dream of the night season that really laid the foundation and framework for my life as a teenager and as an adult and moving into my purpose and destiny. And the spiritual realm, spirit, soul, and body has come out of being birthed out of the last few decades of my experience on this earth and this planet and seeing how the human dynamic works, especially in our culture, where we really do have this dynamic of trichotomous being versus dichotomous being. And that's a lot of what I talk about within the SSB method.
That makes a whole lot of sense, yes. So, I wonder that was this born out of your own personal struggles or through observing others?
For my own struggles, through my own upbringing, the way that the world really interacted with me and me interacting with the world, and also within observations within others, other cultures, other places. I've been around the world in different countries, from the Philippines to Africa to North America to Europe. And what I've seen and observed in my travels and speaking over the last 20 years is that all of us are on an individual quest of finding the purpose to which we've been created, that C link and that DNA of design. And to answer your question, it's a really good one. It's come out of both my personal experience of the highs, the lows, the mountaintops, the valleys, the suffering and the victory, but also through my observation and interaction with human beings on this spiritual quest to really walk in the alignment to fulfill the purpose to which you've been created on this planet.
Mm. Yeah, that origin, makes the method feel alive, like something tested, not just taught, I feel, yes. Now, you talk about walking in the DNA of your design. I'm really curious to know that. What does that practically look like in someone's daily life?
Mm. Well, I would use the example of the armor principle, and you may have heard this or not, or the audience may be familiar with this, some may not. And that is, if I try to put on armor that's customized for somebody else and fit for somebody else, but it doesn't fit me, then when I try to walk in that armor and move in that armor, I'm not going to be any benefit or the fullest good that I could possibly be if I was wearing my own armor. I use that example in the same way with DNA of design. And this is my perspective that if, say, for example, I try to become a full time singer or a musician, well, for me, that's not going to work because I'm not musical. I don't have any musical ability within my capabilities, within my framework. But if I try to become that, yeah, I can probably do some songs and some music, but I'm not going to fully be able to walk in what I was created to do. And for myself, I'm an exhorter. I'm a speaker. I like to inspire individuals to discover that within themselves. And some practical tools, because I'm all about practicality, and I know you are in this show as well, is for our audience maybe to step back and take a look. If you haven't thought about this, of what are areas that I'm passionate about, that you are passionate about, that you are gifted in, that make you come alive, where it's just second nature? And what are areas that maybe seem like a struggle where you're forcing something that really isn't there? And I think these are part of the nudges and the indicators of how we can walk in our DNA of design, is walking in these things that fulfill us spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And when we're starting to pursue those things, then we can really fully equip and activate our DNA of design, our own personal lives.
Mm-hmm. That's a really clear way of putting it, Caleb. And I like that how you made the idea of walking in the DNA of a design feel so practical and approachable. It's really easy for concepts like that to, sound big and abstract. But the way you broke it down shows how it actually plays out in real everyday choices. And I think listeners will surely really connect with that.
Absolutely. Yes, it's everyday choices. It's seeing the link between what we do in our day by day and what we have brewing underneath the surface. Because especially in Western culture, we are more or less focused over, at least in North America, Europe, many of the Western cultures on the emotional, the mental, the accumulating understanding, and the physical. And those areas are important, but the spiritual, the invisible, the unseen realm of creativity, where the artistic inspiration comes from, where the spirituality comes from, where the motivation comes from. This is the place where ideas, entrepreneurial endeavors, and truly that inner light comes from, which is the light of our spirit. Everyone has their own individual definition of what spirituality means. But I fully encourage our audience listening today that yes, there is a divine bridge. There is a connection between your spirituality and practicality. And so often, sometimes I think we can separate these things to say, oh, spirituality is just meditation, prayer, and quiet time. And what does it have to do with my practical life? Well, it can be a bridge between the unseen seen, because everything that is seen has been created from what is invisible. Everything from art to music to entrepreneurial endeavors to leadership to ideas, everything we see in the natural came from the invisible at one point or another.
That's noteworthy. So, like, how can someone know if they're walking in alignment or drifting away from it?
That's a good question. And I would say my answer to that personally would be conscience. You're familiar and the audience with that, the gut feeling of this doesn't feel right, or oh, this feels good. Yes, like that, just that inner conscience. I would say to follow one's conscience of really doing an inventory. And this is what I call a census of your senses. So it's a bit of a play on words. So doing a census, what is a census? Well, a census is like doing a roll call or a gathering of everything together. To use a practical example from Middle Eastern and biblical history, when Caesar Augustus taxed the entire land of the Middle East, Israel, Palestine. There was a decree that went out through the Middle East and throughout the entire earth at that time that the whole world was to be taxed. It was a census, and I use that as an example to step back and practically apply that to our own life. Of we have to have an inner inventory and a census of our five senses: our seeing, our hearing, our smelling, our tasting, our touching, our feeling, a census of our senses physically and spiritually of what are we engaging with, what is right to what we're looking at, and not just physically but obviously down the road, our future, our past, our present, and really discerning and testing what is good, what is applicable in our life, because something that could work for you may not work for me. And it's really about doing that census of our senses, doing that homework, doing that inner inventory and testing what is good and what is best. Because I like to say often the enemy of the best is the good. There's a lot of good opportunities that we will all have in this world, on this planet, but they may not be the best. So I encourage your audience, if you're asking these questions of how do I do that? How do I know if I'm walking my DNA of design? How do I know if I'm walking in the SSB method, spirit, soul, and body? Step back, take a census of your senses, and really ask yourself and your higher power, spirit, creativity, God, whatever your framework is this the best for me? Or is this just a good opportunity? And I think that is a good place to be in.
I love that, Caleb, like bringing it back to such a simple but powerful guide, because deep down most of us do know that when we are aligned or when we have stepped off course. And I think the way you put it really takes away the confusion and shows that alignment isn't overcomplicating things, but about paying attention to that inner compass we all carry.
Exactly. Exactly. 100%. The inner compass is where it directs us to where we're going. Because if we don't follow that inner compass, then we can get off on our own tangent and really muddle our way along. When we look to the inner compass, we look to the inner light, we can find good direction.
Absolutely, yes, that's really an empowering idea, and that design isn't accidental for sure, it's intentional, yes. Now, the three C's are central in your teaching, so can you unpack them for us?
Absolutely. The three C's. Very, very important. And this is something that I talk about within the C link, seeing the link between these three C's, actually, as well on my YouTube channel at the C link. I highly recommend you subscribe to it because I've got the 3-part mini series in there talking about that. But I will, for the sake of our audience today and for us talking on the inner light, that we're going to have this breakdown of the 3 C's, and that is construct, conform, and contract. Those are the 3 C's. And within the first 3 letters of the words of the 3 C's are con. And oftentimes in our culture, we've heard of this terminology, a con job. And in my opinion, one of the greatest con jobs in the history of the world is this peer pressure of stepping into a DNA of design that was not meant for us. It's saying, oh, you have to, in order for you to be successful as a individual in life or as somebody of wealth or business or doing anything, you got to become like the next Grant Cardone or Tony Robbins or Taylor Swift. You have to do it the way that they did it 100%. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to be successful. Well, that's a con job. That's the con within those construct, conform, and contract. And when we are building our construct, our individual design, it's important that we push back against the peer pressure of conformity, because this world will always try to get you and I, and all of us listening, to conform to a way of success from somebody else. It doesn't mean that we can't learn from other people, but I would highly caution anybody, and speaking to the choir myself too, from completely throwing away our personal inheritance and our birthright and putting that aside to conform to somebody else's image of what their version of success is, or making a contract and agreeing with that, because the final C of the 3 C's between construct, conform, and contract is this issue of contract. And every day in our world and culture, all across the world, from Canada to India to Europe to South America to Australia, all around the globe, contracts are made and received and given and agreed upon on a day-by-day basis with paper. Those are physical contracts. But when there's a physical contract that's made, it's because there's an agreement with something that is unseen. There's an unseen element that's activated. When we make conscious contracts in the physical, we are actually making a contract in the spiritual. So beware of covenants, contracts, and agreements within these 3 C's, the construct, conform, and contract, because contracts will determine your construct on whether you are going to conform to the crowd of peer pressure or whether you're going to form your own construct. That's really a breakdown of the 3 C's.
First of all, thank you for laying that out so clearly, Caleb. And the way you explain the 3 C's really shows that how they build on each other and give people a framework that can actually apply in real life. I think it makes your message really accessible. Listeners can walk away not just inspired, but with something practical they can hold on to.
Exactly. 100%. You got it.
So, which of the 3 C's, do people tend to struggle with the most and why?
I would say that conformity is really the meat in the sandwich between construct and contract. I would say the one that people most often tend to struggle with is conformity. It's conforming to just follow the crowd. I'm sure that everyone listening right now has heard the phrase of, oh, let's just go with the majority, or following the crowd and following what the group thinks, versus standing and making a stand for something that you and I believe in, even if it means being the minority. And the best analogy I can think of in the present moment right now is this little cartoon sketch. And there's 2 desks. There's one that's called Uncomfortable Truths, and then there's the other one called Pleasant Lies. And you've got a lineup of many, many people that are lining up for the pleasant lies. And then you've got an empty desk with somebody waiting, and there's nobody, or there's very little people going towards the lineup of uncomfortable truths. And so often in our culture, conformity, I believe, is one of the biggest struggles, if not the biggest struggle, because of this cult of comfort. The social media and the mainstream media likes to present and elevate this culture of, if you have this, this, and this, then you're going to be comfortable. Everything's going to be rosy. Everything's going to be well. But this isn't really the way that the world works. The way that the world works, this inner light and drawing this inspiration from within, walking with God, walking with the Spirit, we are going to encounter these uncomfortable truths, these moments where we have to make a choice of either making a stand for our DNA of design, of seeing that link and walking out our purpose to which we've been created, or conforming to what somebody else thinks that we should do. And I think conformity is the greatest struggle. That's my perspective. What do you think?
I really appreciate how you broke down not just which of the three C's is the most challenging, but also why people get stuck there. It adds a lot of depth and help listeners that see that they are not alone if they have wrestled with the same thing, while also, giving them hope that it's something they can walk through. And that's a really insightful point, according to me.
Exactly. Absolutely. We can all work through that. We all are in this place where we have to push back against conformity because I believe that you and I, all of us on this planet, we've been brought to the earth for such a time as this. We are born in this generation. We could have been born in a different generation, generations past from hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago. But right now is the time that we are here. And it's important that we grasp that and form and don't conform into the other image that is pressured upon us, but form into the image that we've been created with by God and by our higher power and by spirit. And then delving deep into our inner light. And what does that look like? It means creating an atmosphere of peace because in our culture, there's so much busyness, there's so much hustle. You've heard of the phrase before, all of our listeners have, many of them have, I'm sure. Hustle culture is real. We have to be responsible human beings, but we can't be over busy where we neglect our inner light, that inner sanctuary. Oftentimes, peace is the potting soil of revelation. And out of peace is a place where we're most productive. It's kind of a paradox. Many people think that out of hustleness and busyness and always being busy is most productivity. Well, I would counter that with actually the place of the most productivity and success is operating from a realm of deep peace. And that comes from cultivating inner light, where peace is the potting soil of revelation. Here we can be most fruitful.
100%, yes. And it's really fascinating that how the simple principles they carry such deep transformation. Absolutely. Now, you emphasize engaging the senses to create an atmosphere of peace. So, how can listeners practically do this in their homes or workplaces?
I would say for homes and workplaces, one of the practices that I highly recommend would be to start your morning as slow as you can and in a place of gratitude and thankfulness, whatever spirituality and engaging with the spirit looks like for you. For me, I posture my heart towards being thankful for the breath that I have, for the life that I have towards God, and really finding those moments in the morning to be able to meditate and just chew on the insight and revelation that I have by the ancient texts. Like I study the ancient texts, the scriptures, but also dreams of the night season. That's something we touched on a little bit in my bio. I strongly believe that everybody does dream according to science. By the time we reach 60 years of age, we'll have slept 20 years of our life. So dreams are a big part of that. I always keep a dream journal next to my bed so that when I wake up, if I remember my dreams that I had, I write them down because it's really, really important to follow these code maps and these inner compasses, including dreams of the night season, to be able to follow them as a guide because they can help us in our day by day. That's a practical example from the home. For workplace, I would say even in the busyness of being at work or university or maybe on public transit to and coming from work, that put yourself, I'm just speaking to myself here as well, I'm with you right here in your shoes, put ourselves in this place of just envisioning in our mind's eye of where we want to be most effective in our day by day, and knowing that we're in a place of no matter what we do, whether we succeed or whether we fail, that we are fully loved and acceptable where we are. We don't have to strive, we don't have to perform, but we are acceptable in the image of God. And whatever God looks like for you, just turn your heart towards him or her, towards the spirit in that place of thankfulness and gratitude. That's what my recommendation is. Envision it, see it, speak it, and then walk in it.
That's such a beautiful perspective, Caleb. And I like that how you tied the idea of peace to something as simple as starting the morning slowly and, paying attention to our dreams, as you said. It really makes it practical and personal at the same time. And I love that what you said about the workplace too, like envisioning ourselves in a certain space or state of mind feels like a very powerful way to set the tone for how we show up during the day. And I think surely for sure listeners will find that both grounding and inspiring, Caleb.
Absolutely. Yeah. Envisioning it, seeing it, because what we behold, we become. And the eye is the lamp of the body. Whatever we look at, if it's light, our whole body, our whole spirit, soul, and body be full of light. If we look at darkness, if we look at all the terrible things that are happening in the world or suffering, or we're just looking at negative news, or we're looking at or thinking negative thoughts, these things are going to play out in our lives. But as much as humanly possible in this imperfect planet, it's good to be able to put in front of us those things which are above, and those things which are above the craziness, which is walking in our full purpose and our potential, and communing with God and walking in the spirit, and not being conformed to this world system and this pattern, but being renewed by the transforming of our mind.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And yeah, that's a wonderful line. What we behold, we become. Yes. So, do you see peace as something we invite or something we actively cultivate?
That's a really good question. I would say it's both. I would say we seek to invite and cultivate. It's a partnership. And my perspective is a partnership. And what I mean by that is peace is an opportunity, one that each one of us has every day to be able to lean into or resist or not embrace. And it is the analogy that I can think of, the best analogy. It comes from the ancient book of Genesis, where it talks about God walking in the Garden of Eden, talking with man and woman in the cool of the day. And there's an invitation from the spirit of peace, from the Prince of Peace, from the Shalom, from the higher spiritual frequency. There's an invitation to walk in peace, to not just depend on our own mind, our own emotions, but to invite peace, to invite the Prince of Peace, to invite the Spirit of Peace, to invite peace to walk with us. And then when we invite peace to walk with us, to cultivate that inner Eden, that Garden of Eden. I believe that every single human being, spirit, soul, and body, that we all have our own Garden of Eden within ourselves, and how that looks like playing out in our lives and cultivating that. What do I mean by that? Well, for me and my family, part of our Garden of Eden being played out in our lives is when the doves come to visit us in our home. The doves come to visit, and we talk to them, and they coo and they sing, and they come near our house almost every evening when the sun sets, and they drink the water that we leave out for them. Sometimes when we're walking down the street and we see the smile of a happy dog and you pet the dog, you can see the peace there. When we're looking out on the reeds out near our house in the marshes, and the wind is blowing back and forth like it was yesterday, having a meal and hearing the rustling of the trees and the wind in the wheat and in the reeds, that is peace. But that's a conscious decision to cultivate peace and to partner with the Prince of Peace and the Spirit of Peace for you, for your audience, for everyone listening. And that could look different. It could look by being in the park and looking up at the clouds and getting creative ideas for poetry or music, or for the next art piece that you're going to do, or the next exposition or public speaking event that you have, or it could be the next family gathering, how you're going to gather, and the food that you're going to prepare, and how you're going to be able to function and interact with people. That could be what peace looks like for you. It could look like writing. It could look like, just you fill in the blanks. So whatever peace looks like for you, it's a partnership of inviting that in within your own DNA of design. To answer your question fully and to bring it back into the harbor here, to land the ship, that is, we cultivate peace, and we partner with peace, and we invite peace. All of them in one.
I really like the way you described it as partnership, Caleb. Like seeing peace as both an invitation and something we cultivate adds such balance. And it's not just waiting for it to show up, and it's not all on our shoulders either. That perspective, I think, takes some of the pressure off while, still reminding us we play an active role in making space for it.
100%, 100%, because it's all about partnership. If we take the full responsibility on our shoulders, we're just going to get burned out, exhausted, and overwhelmed. And the universe, the world, the realm of peace is so vast and wide. And all we have to do is just be an open vessel, to be a free agent for the things of the spirit, for the things of peace. Have our sails up and be willing to look for peace in all the places.
Oh, that redefines peace not as a passive calm, I would say, but as an intentional atmosphere. I completely agree with you, Caleb. Now, you have spoken across very diverse settings from New Age festivals to Bible colleges. So, how has that shaped your understanding of truth and transformation? Can you share a little bit in short?
Yes. For that, across many different cultures and environments and settings, it has come to a realization and experience for me that every single person, and a reminder that every single person, every single culture, every single place is unique to them. It is a customized experience, and every culture is going to have a different way of speaking the language of spirituality and how they understand and apply principles to peace. Which is one of the reasons why, when I'm speaking in public speaking settings and workshops and podcasts in front of dozens, individuals, hundreds, or thousands, I always like to ask this question: what does spirituality mean to you? And the answer to that question will dictate the language in which I use, because I have my belief systems, I have my perspective, but it's important to, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And in that way of communicating in a language that everybody can understand, but while still holding on to our own principles and beliefs, but speaking in a language that someone can understand. Like if I'm coming over to India, or I'm going over to Russia or to Germany or to England, or you fill in the blanks, there are some protocols that I have that I'm going to adhere to in a language that I'm going to speak, that is going to be customized for that group. So this has kept me on my toes in the best possible way, that when I'm presenting my core values, my beliefs and perspectives, to offer it in such a way, in a language that is custom to the people, to where they can understand and receive it, but in a similar way of always encouraging people to chew on the meat and spit out the bones. And that's what I say here in this podcast right now. If you're listening to Inner Light, you're listening to me talk on this podcast with Sana, Caleb Matthews, and you're like, oh, I agree with some of what he's saying. Some of what he's saying, I'm not sure if I agree with that. I encourage you to chew on the meat or chew on the vegetables, or whatever food analogy you use, chew on it and spit out the bones, spit out the veggies or whatever that don't apply to you, and receive what adheres to your, helping you in your journey, and what does not, just brush it aside. But that's what I've learned is, you know what, offering the seed, all I can do is plant the seed, all I can do is offer the seed, and if it's something that's beneficial for the audience, great. If not, no harm done, no worries. And that's where I come from.
I think that's such a valuable insight, Caleb. And I love how you point out that every culture has its own language for spirituality, and yet there's a common thread that connects them. It really shows your openness to learning from different species and honoring the unique ways people seek truth. And that perspective makes your message resonate even more broadly. So Caleb, you left us with a powerful reminder, I would say, that peace, clarity, and alignment are not distant ideals, but daily practices. For listeners, if tonight's conversation stirred something in you, take a moment to reflect. Are your spirit, soul, and body in harmony? Ask yourself, and if not, maybe this is an invitation to step into the DNA of a design. And Caleb, you were able to say something.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would just say in conclusion, thank you so much for having me on the show, and for Inner Light, and for peace. And I encourage everyone in our audience to invite the spirit of peace, to invite peace and to cultivate peace within your environment, spirit, soul, and body, and walk in that, walk in the full DNA of your design, that construct that you have. Don't conform, but be wary of contracts, and make the right contract with the Prince of Peace, with the Spirit of Peace, with the overshadowing of peace, and may it overshadow your life, and may you walk in your fullest design, fullest potential, wherever you're listening from India to Europe to North America to Africa to South America to Central America to Asia to Australia to New Zealand, everywhere you're listening from. I encourage you, walk in the DNA design And I believe that you are going to reach the purpose to which you've been created. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I really had a good time with you.
That's the kind of gentle and powerful reminder, Caleb.